Welcome to the very first episode of Making Gains in association with the University of Derby and Finnebrogue's Naked Bacon, the biggest revolution to happen to British breakfast in a generation. Now, this podcast series is all about one thing, people on that there, the pursuit of excellence. And our very first guest is a man who personifies that and then some. He's one of the strongest human beings to ever have walked planet Earth. He is a 3-time world champion in 3 different strength sports. He is the WWE Hall of Famer, the former WWE heavyweight champion of the world, Mark Henry. Welcome to Making Gains, sir.
What's going on, man? Good to be on the show.
It's really, really good to talk to you. And Mark, can we go right the way back here? Because some of your numbers are just mythical. And first of all, your size. Is it true that in 4th grade at 10 years old, you were 225 pounds?
I was indeed. And there was not many people that were my size, only the teachers.
What's life like when you're that big, that young?
You know what? I was always told, hey, you got to be careful. You got to be more responsible than everybody else. And I kind of learned to kind of watch myself and give other people graces because, you know, kids can be cruel and they used to pick on me, but, you know, like there were people that also had my back. So, you know, I had to be one that not to lash out, but just to learn how to communicate.
Right. And how did you get into powerlifting? Because again, the world's strongest teenager was your moniker, and justifiably so. How did that start?
You know what? I watched the Olympics when I was really young, and I saw Vasily Alexiev, who was the strongest guy I'd ever seen, and he's still one of my favorites. And I wanted to be like him. I mean, the people threw roses at him and he bowed and he was very colorful and entertaining. And I was like, man, I want to be just like that. So I begged my mother for weights and she bought weights for us when I was probably 11 or 12. And I just lifted almost every day.
Because as a teenager, you had the junior record, world record for squat and total, national records in all 4 categories. Were you strong right from the off?
You know what? I was kind of naturally strong and athletic, but it was how much work that I did. Like I felt like I worked like I didn't have talent. And
Wow. Okay.
there was no summers off. There was no time for me to stop. So, you know, when you train your whole life just to escape from the real world, you tend to kind of do like a Rocky movie. You know, you go away and train and you come back. I never had the time where I stopped. So my life was a constant Rocky training montage.
How did you feel before you actually got under the bar? So right at that moment there, people have different approaches. What went through your brain at that point?
You know what? I focused to block out any other thoughts other than the lift that I was going to make. And I was so confident that I was going to make my attempt that, you know, I really had no stress. You know, like the only time that I would have any kind of negative feelings is after a miss. But I only missed twice in my entire career in competition. I hardly ever missed.
And to be clear, you have 3 lifts. Each lift, you have 3 attempts. You choose the weight. And throughout your entire competitions, 2 misses.
That's it.
Wow. And your transition to Olympic lifting, I was lucky enough to work at the Olympics in 2012 in weightlifting. And most of the guys there are 30 years old plus, some late 30s, sometimes early 40s, the legends certainly. How on earth did you transition to Olympic lifting so quickly? Because within 9 months, it was just phenomenal.
You know what? I'm really, really blessed. God gave me a special ability to be flexible to be explosive, and to never have to worry about size. I had great size from the beginning. So the only thing I had to do was apply myself and to keep working and to try to get better than I was the day before. And I did that to a point to where I was almost crazy. Like I trained every day. And, like now, uh, understanding the body more, I know how to let my body rest. I train back and bis one day, chest and tries another day, legs another day, core and explosive movements, and you break everything up. But when I was a kid, man, like I did everything every day. And I was explaining to my son not long ago that whenever I had to do a squat, I had to do a good morning because my weights were on a bench press. So I would have to get under the bench, pull good morning the weight up, and then to do squats. So I did things that you don't want to do. I would train my kids not to do it, but it made me exceptionally strong because I did a full body movement every day. Like it never, there was never a point where um, I learned how to break up the lifts until I was older.
And how long after you tried Olympic lifting for the first time did you qualify for Barcelona 92?
It was 10 months altogether. But the first meet that I went to was after 3 months. And I went to the juniors nationals and I won, but I barely won. And if it came down to somebody else missing, and if they made that lift, then I come in second.
Right.
But I didn't ever want to feel like that again. And where there were times where I was unfocused, then that all went out the window. I was super focused. I had trouble doing front squats. My wrists were not very flexible when I first started. And every day I would put heavy weight on the bar and push my wrist against the bar. And sometimes I would pick it up off of the rack and I would just let it hang on my shoulders, like just to bend my wrist to become more flexible, to the point to where my coach said, "Hey, we're not doing that today. Like, don't do that." Like I had to be reeled back because I wanted to be better than I was, like I said, the day before.
And so you're 20 years old representing your country in a sport where, frankly, people have, we'll call it assistance. You're going out to Barcelona as a young man. How was that actual experience representing the Stars and Stripes?
You know what? I took a lot of pride in, I had uncles that were military. So they always wore their military hats and military jackets and stuff. And I got a chance to kind of, be like them. It felt like I was a soldier almost. And I really enjoyed that process. But you said something that was very insightful, and I see where you're going to go. That I had no assistance. Like, when there's two ways you can look at that. The first way is I came from never doing it and learning how to do it. And then there's also that there were people that were taking drugs to be strong like I was and kind of even in the playing field by cheating. And I competed against the cheaters and I called out the cheaters, and the International Federation for weightlifting they used to tell me all the time not to do that because I was going to get the sport kicked out of the Olympics. I think that looking back at it now, I should have kept doing it and got the sport kicked out of the Olympics, at least so they could have got it cleaned up. And then maybe the sport could come back and be better than it was before. But even now, they're kicking out all the people that are sticklers and that that really don't want the drugs in the sport, and
Right.
it's very corrupt. And I don't even follow the sport anymore.
Okay. You mentioned your uncles being an inspiration. Can you tell us how big your uncle Chad was? Because he's, again, a mythical man.
Well, it's like Chud, like Dud, but
Ah, thank you.
Chud
Okay.
Chud Chud was around 6'6", 6'7", closer to 500 pounds than 400 pounds, and a very large man. Never had shoes. He always wore moccasins, like leather wrapped around his feet with string. And my grandmother's favorite cousin, and she used to tell us all the time that it was very common for him to work a well. And I don't know if you ever seen somebody work an old school well where they had to turn a hand crank like this to pull water from down in the earth to up. And it usually took two people to do it. And he would do it by himself, like, pretty easily. Like it was no big thing to him. And they all thought that was like one of the most unbelievable things. But he worked in the woods, cutting down trees, and in East Texas, he was famous like Paul Bunyan. Some stories, American mythical legends, and that's where I come from.
Right. And between going back to the Olympics, between Barcelona 92 and Atlanta 96, you're also doing powerlifting as well as Olympic lifting. But everything I've seen of you, it's always raw in powerlifting. Were you ever tempted to go down the benching shirts or singlets, anything like that?
No, when I was 18, I put on the equipment and it tore my skin, and it hurt so bad. I was like, I don't want to do this. And I put on like the first time I put on a bench shirt, I lifted like 40 pounds more than I ever lifted before, and I felt like it was cheating. It was just like I can't do that. Like I want to do it myself. I don't want nothing to help
Right.
me. And the guy that made the shirt, he came up to me and said that I can put. He was beating his chest. I can put 50 pounds on your bench. Like he helped me do it. I didn't want nobody's help. I wanted to do it myself. And so I vowed kind of during that time that I would never use equipment. And all I ever used was a belt and knee wraps.
Yeah, it's
And,
phenomenal.
and
Only a few guys do that. Like Ray Williams, for example, in the squat now, who's got
yeah,
the world record. You see guys like him, but rare breeds. It's mostly equipped now. You see in powerlifting.
yeah. And I love Ray. And he reached out to me probably about 4 years ago, and said that I was the guy that made him want to be a lifter. And he was going to lift the way that I lifted. And he does.
Right.
And like he's my favorite power lifter, not just because he liked me, but because he does it raw. And I just
Right.
respect that more.
Yeah, I hear that. In terms of Atlanta 96, how was that competing at a home Olympics, being a captain? And by the way, being, I think, 188 kilos, which makes you still the heaviest ever Olympian. How was that?
Well, I guess I can't really brag about how much I ate. I just ate and ate and ate. how hard I trained, like I was burning off that fuel too. So it wasn't like I was just a disgusting fat body. During that time, I had 15% body fat. So I was heavily muscled at that
At
time
188 kilos. Wow.
and drug free. Like all these guys that um, they take the drugs to even the be 30% more man. Um, if they had been 30% less, I would have been an Olympic champion.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. How did you meet Charles Barkley and Karl Malone? Was that during Atlanta?
Yeah, that was during that. No, that was during Barcelona. That was during when they were the Dream Team. And
Okay.
I recently had Karl Malone on my show on Busted Open, and he's got a new cigar line. And he saw me smoking a cigar on social media, and he was like, "Man, I want to send you a box of my cigars." And I still haven't sent him my address. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I gotta send him my address so he can mail them. Thanks for reminding me.
My pleasure. Tell Karl Malone to be the mailman, literally. Um, Also, around that time, could you tell the story about how you met Michael Jordan? Because somehow Michael Jordan, one of the greatest sports people of all time, decides that he's going to insult 96 Mark Henry.
But you know what? Looking at it from his perspective, which I'm blessed to be able to do because a lot of people can't see past their own nose. Um, of course, Michael was Michael Jordan. You know, you're the number one recognized athlete on the planet. And he had a little arrogance to him. I say a little being nice. And and I'm at the Olympic Village and I leave the village and go to the hotel where the Dream Team was staying because I knew Charles Barkley and Karl Malone already. And I'm hanging out with them, hanging out in the lobby, and Michael comes down and he sees everybody he recognizes except for me. So, rather than and if it was me, I'd have been like, "Hey man, I don't know you. My name's Mark," and I'd introduce myself. And his way of doing that was, who are you? And I just looked at that as being disrespectful. And I've talked to people that have told me like, you know what? I don't know if I've seen that as being disrespectful. I think it was a little rude. It was a little forward. But the way that I'm sensitive, and and I took it like, who are you? Like, why are you asking me who I am? And he was like, no, I didn't mean it like that. And he explained and we talked and he actually ended up apologizing and he invited me to his birthday party that was at the All-Star game. I went, I had a great time. I shook his hand and I left and I never really thought about it. But when I told that story on Vlad TV, it just took off all over the world. And um, it's cool to go viral, but you want to tell both sides of the story. And I'm sure if you mentioned that to him, he probably wouldn't even remember it. He might, but I doubt it.
You see, say he might not remember. I think he's going to remember a 400-pound dude being in his face saying, "Who are you?" I think he might remember it, Mark.
Yeah, I think he would now that you say it. He was a little bit scared.
Could you see it in his eyes?
Yeah, he backtracked pretty quick.
In terms of records as well, you have still to this day the current largest ever total for the 5 major lifts. So clean and jerk, snatch, squat, bench, deadlift. You still have that world record. What do you think
Yeah.
it is about you that makes you so prolific in all the lifts?
You know what? I think that I was complete. Like every lifter is not complete. And where I was weak, I with my this craziness of not wanting to fail. I just got in the gym and with my coaches, because my coaches had a lot to do with it. I wanted them to break down my technique so that I can be more efficient. And then all I had to do was apply the energy and the consistency and the training, and not cheat myself. And a lot of people, when I say cheat myself, you go in the gym and you say, you know what, I'm gonna do 100 reps of squats and I'm gonna do 50 reps of lunges. And then they get in there and they get around 80 reps and they go, okay, that's good enough. No, if I say I'm gonna do 100, I'll do 100. And I never cheated myself. When I went in the gym, like when I was younger, I would be in the gym 6, 7 hours a day. Like it was my job.
Oh,
And
wow.
um, I wasn't always lifting heavy of those 7 hours, but I was doing everything that I could to make myself better.
So I was speaking to some of the brains at University of Derby that specialize in strength and conditioning, and I was kind of telling them about you, and they were talking about your power expression is basically off the charts. And the obvious thing being, did you ever try to put that into any other sports? Because you'd have made a world-class linebacker or sumo wrestler or rugby player. Were you ever tempted to go any of those routes?
You know what? I told my son last week that I wish that I gave sumo wrestling a try. I would
Really?
have, man. I look at sumo wrestling and it's tailor made for me. That's a sport. I would have been so famous in Japan. Oh my God. I may not, but see, God puts you on the path that you need to be on, and the path that He put me on was, I was a childhood fan of pro wrestling, and I
Yeah.
got to live that dream. I didn't even know that that was possible for a little black kid from Silsbee, Texas, which was a really small place that you just like, how did you leave there? How did you get out of that place? There was just no way that that should have happened. But if I had got into sumo, then that would have never happened. So
Yeah.
I would have been doing something else really, really far away from home. But you know what? I everything that I've done, I have no regrets. The things that I have regrets about, they have nothing to do with sports.
Okay.
Um, I wish that I had took better care of my money. I wish I'd have finished being a Boy Scout. I was a first class. I was one classification away from being an Eagle Scout, and I regret not ever doing that. And um, there were a couple of times that I went places where I wish I'd have taken pictures with certain people. I wish I'd have took a picture with Mandela when I met him, and I
You met
didn't.
Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, man. The first
Oh,
time I went to South Africa, um, it was when the apartheid was over and he had been released from prison, and I was at this function that he spoke at, and I had the opportunity to shake his hand in the hallway on the way to the cars, and I didn't tell somebody, hey, come take a picture. I didn't get a picture. I was so kind of in awe of him that I didn't get that picture. And I regret not getting that picture with Nelson Mandela. It's not many regrets that I have in my life. It's like three or four things.
touching on the whole Mandela thing, one of the greatest men, in my opinion, to ever exist, and a black man who overcame so much. Being a black man, an African American yourself, doing it in powerlifting, where there are very few, Olympic lifting, where I can't think of any other than yourself, in WWE, which when you arrived in, again, very few. What does that mean to you to represent that community of people?
You know what? I take a lot of pride in everything I ever did. And I can't, a lot of people say you might be the greatest American lifter or the greatest African American lifter of all time. I would not say that I was in weightlifting. I think John Davis, um,
Okay.
who won the Olympics right after the war in '44. I think John Davis. I would list him as the greatest U.S. weightlifter. Also, uh, he was national and world champion. So you
Okay.
can't negate John Davis. You know, if you say you did, I'm the only one you know, but John Davis won the world championship, so he's the number one in my book. Um, I take a lot of pride in what I did in wrestling because people like Ernie Ladd and Junkyard Dog, and there's a list of probably about 20 African American wrestlers that did it the right way, that did
Right.
it respectfully and took no crap off nobody. Like if you were racist to them, you got punched in the mouth, and
Right.
um, that was what I got from Ernie Ladd, who came before me, and he said, "Look, I need you to not be a Tom." And I don't know if you understand what that term is,
Uncle
being
Tom.
a
Yeah.
leader. He's like, don't be a sellout, and don't mess it up for everybody black after you. And I thought it was a lot of pressure at first, but as I got older, I realized that I couldn't take no crap off nobody. And the luxury that the African American wrestlers have today, I think some of that is owed to not only me, but to Ron Simmons, who was the first black champion, and Big Daddy Ritter, or JYD, who you see on the poster behind me, was one
Yeah.
of my childhood favorites. Ernie Ladd and Jim Mitchell, who was the first African American wrestler to wrestle a white wrestler in on a consistent basis. Everybody say Bobo Brazil was the wrestler that broke the color line, but Jim Mitchell came before him, and Jim Mitchell had a match against Gorgeous George in the
Right.
Coliseum in Los Angeles, and I just respect all the history of those guys, and I just wanted to honor my people, and I wanted to honor my family, and I wanted to honor my country. And if you have that in mind, you can't do nothing but have success. Because a lot of people don't respect anything but money or power, and I respect those things too. I ain't nothing like some money. I love it, but I do have a level of respect and reverence for the people that came before me to open those doors.
You mentioned Gorgeous George. Funnily enough, his style, the way he came to the ring, was what inspired Muhammad Ali's style. So
Right.
it's interesting that color line that kind of emanates in so many areas because Ali, one of the all-time greats in sport, but in humanity as well.
Well, I heard the open for the show. You had Ali in your open, and um, obviously you're a big fan. I was a big fan myself, and I have some some handmade autographs. I knew him and met him several times.
Oh
And,
man.
yeah, man. Like I was friends with his daughter, Kalia, and
Okay.
I got invited to a function, and when I was with the WWE, and she was there with him. And I said, "Is there any way that you can get your dad to autograph a photo for my wife's dad?" And she said, "Yeah, just come over and talk to him." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna go talk to Ali." And I mean, it was like one of those geek out moments. Like as a young kid, I walked over there and talked to him, and he was just the nicest you could be, man. Like that, I don't know if I ever met somebody nicer. And he signed that autograph for my wife's dad, and man, I just I think about him at the Olympics and different things. Like he was one of those guys. He wasn't a pro wrestler, but he loved pro wrestling. And he was very good friends with Andre the Giant. And he was the sole factor in his relationship with Andre was what made him go to the first WrestleMania.
That's how that happened.
That's how it happened. It was like he was
Wow.
friends with Andre, and Vince asked Andre, hey, you think you can get Ali to come to WrestleMania? And he said, I'll check. And that's how it happened. Like, I mean, there's the balance of sports, and what made people love pro wrestling is the storytelling. It's the being able to put people in suspended belief, and you're in an action movie, but you're actually in it. Like you don't know where you end and it begins. And that's what pro wrestling did. And Ali realized that Gorgeous George was a great entertainer because he loved it. And for him to love something, like he loved boxing, meant that it really struck a chord in his heart. So I love that, and we had several conversations. I philosophy, about religion, and my wife's dad asked me one time, "Do you know God, or do you know Jesus?" And I said, "Yes." Ali is the only other person that I think in my sports career that asked me, do you believe in God? And I was like, yes. And but it's funny that both of those guys were both boxers.
Right.
So, it's like, I've had an interesting life, man, and the people that I've met. And one of these days, I'm gonna have to write my memoirs and talk about all the people that I've met.
It would be a travesty if you didn't, because I mean, Ali and Nelson Mandela alone. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
Talking about other people, a person, certainly from a name standpoint, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who you know because you competed in the first ever Arnold Classic. Now, am I right in thinking that you only took 6 weeks to train for that?
It was about 6 weeks, 6, 7 weeks. And I was already lifting. My mother had recently passed away, and I was in the hospital with her for about a month. And every day I was going train and come back to the hospital. And I go train, I go back to the hospital. And I was starting to get strong. So I guess you almost could say 2 months or 3 months, but I only spent about 7 weeks working on the actual Arnold events.
And so that was what it's considered now, the Arnold Classic, to be, in some people's opinion, the purists, the strongman event to win because it's known for being the heaviest.
Right.
You won the very first one. There was Sven Carlson, the 2001 world's strongest man there. There was Raymonsberg Marnis. There were lots. There was Andy Bolton, who had the world record for the deadlift at that time. Didn't Vince McMahon give you a proposition that you couldn't really fail at that point?
He did. He said there was no place for the second strongest man. And a lot of people may look at that as the ultimate pressure, but I knew that I was going to win. like it was strength sports involved. The only way that I lost is if something broke and I didn't
Right.
finish. And, you know, that's not the same thing as losing. That's just not being able to finish competing. But when I went there, I had every intention on coming in first in every event. And I almost did. The only reason
And
that I
you,
didn't come in first in every event is because after 2 events, I was already so far ahead that I, you know, took my foot off the gas and just did enough to win.
and as a result, you win a Hummer. An actual Hummer is your prize.
Hey, I drove it this morning. I drive it almost. I still
Still
have
got
it.
it.
I'm never gonna get rid of it.
Well, I don't. That is, what size engine is it?
You know what, man? I can't even remember what size, but I know it's a V8, 4-wheel drive. It drinks petrol like nothing in the. I mean, it swallows it, and but I love it, and I'm gonna drive it until the wheels fall off.
I hear that. Were you ever tempted to go and compete in World's Strongest Man? Because I mentioned Sven Carlson, who'd won World's Strongest Man the year before.
No, I never had time. Like, you know, during that time, I was doing a full wrestling schedule, and the least amount of days that I was on the road was 230, and you really hovered around 250 days a year. So I was gone. I was away from home a lot.
Is it hard to take the bumps as a big guy? Do they hurt more than for somebody, say, my size?
I think the bumps hurt equally the same. It's just that if you have more weight hitting the ground, um, there are certain things you really shouldn't do. I landed on my butt a lot, and thus I broke my tailbone. I broke well, I didn't break it, but I have a herniated disc in my lower vertebrae based off the fact that I kept doing those maneuvers. Um, my son says he has interest in wrestling when he's out of college and, you know, kind of establish into his life. And I told him that he's not going to do all the stuff that I did because I don't want
Right.
him to be beat up like I'm beat up.
Who was the strongest person you ever performed with in the ring?
Oh, Big Show. Between Big Show, Brock Lesnar, and probably right now Cesaro. Cesaro is small, but man, he is double strong. He is exceptionally strong, and he works hard at it too.
I think Cesaro, from what I understand, is functionally strong as well. So it's not
Yes.
just gym numbers; it's actually what he can do when you're carrying somebody else, catching somebody else.
Mm-hmm. You look at leverage. He has very long arms with his strength, which helps out, and big hands, strong grip, and he works out in the gym very hard. So, you know, he's another one of those respected guys for me.
When you're looking to scout potential future talent, what is it you look for? Because you basically found Braun Strowman at a strongman show.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with athletic ability. People will say, wow, man, they must have to be a really good athlete. Nope. When you walk, you ever been in a room and you could hear everybody laughing, and then you go over and it's this one person that's got everybody laughing, that, you know, that girl that walks in a room and everybody goes, who's that? Like that, are they a star? Like there are certain people that have something that everybody else don't. And those are the people that I go to and I ask them, have you ever thought about pro wrestling? And if they're establishing their careers, then, you know, I'm like, hey, more power to you. But if you ever feel like, you know, wrestling is something that you would like to try, you'd be good at it, then give me a call. And Bianca Belair was one of those. Braun Strowman was one of those. Baron Corbin was one of those. Apollo Crews and who else is still with the company? Um, those are the ones that are stars, like major stars. But there's probably another 10 people that that I've looked at that I've helped mentor.
Okay.
I think Daniel Bryan was one that was on the Indies, and I had to lie a little bit. I told everybody he was bigger than he was, but his talent was undeniable. I said, you got to see this guy, and I was captivated watching him wrestle. And thank God that worked out, because we got to see Daniel Bryan.
In terms of athleticism, can you think of anyone that you've met that's more athletic as a big man as you are? Because when I first saw footage of you slam dunk a basketball at 180 kilograms, I could not believe it.
You know what? If you go to the NFL, you'll find 100 guys that can do the athletic things I did, like dunk a basketball, run a fast 40, have a plus 32-inch vertical, move laterally, and all of that stuff. But I don't think you'll find anyone that could do all of those things and be as strong as I am or was. That was what God gave me. And everybody has their superpower. Mine was strength. I can't say enough that my work ethic is with what God gave me is what made that happen.
And you mentioned kind of being Superman. Has Superman ever met Batman or Spider-Man when he's gone, okay, this guy might just outdo me? Have you ever met that guy?
Oh, man.
Because Bill Kazmaier in '03 said, when asked who's the strongest man in the world right now, he said you. And Bill Kazmaier is, I mean, I love Bill Kazmaier.
You know what? I felt that way in weightlifting when I met Shane Hammond. When I met Shane Hammond, he was strong, but he was flexible and explosive, and he broke my snatch record. And I was like, "Wow, man, that's really impressive." And he's as equally a nice guy as he is a great lifter. Got you, Rich Williams, you in powerlifting. You reference him. He couldn't deadlift what I deadlifted, so his total was lower than mine. But man, if you could have got that guy 850, 875 deadlift, then I would have said he was a better power lifter. But I don't know if there's ever been somebody that was tailor-made for powerlifting like me. I hope that in my lifetime I get to see somebody break my records. Because I want to be able to shake the hand of the nearest best power lifter of all time.
I hear that. And final question, Mark, is I mentioned your 5 lifts, the largest total in the major 5 lifts. If you go through the numbers, we have, in terms of pounds, snatch 397, clean and jerk 485, squat 954, bench 858, deadlift 904. How many of those numbers would have increased if you didn't go WWE and you dedicate yourself just to powerlifting or to strongman or to Olympic lifting?
Well, all of those lifts, I did more than those later on. It just was not in competition.
Right. Okay.
I did an exhibition in Colorado Springs where I snatched 402, and I did a 520 clean and jerk, or clean, but I missed the jerk.
Okay.
My bench stayed about the same. I did a 915 deadlift that a lot of people saw, but it wasn't in competition.
That was straps.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, was that with straps or was it just?
No strap.
Ooh.
So all of these guys that do the deadlift now and they use straps, I respect the hustle, but until people take the straps off, I can't give you the Mark Henry discount. I can't do it. You don't
we
get
all
it.
want that discount, Mark. We all want it.
You want the Mark Henry discount, you got to take them straps off.
Mark,
I want to see somebody snatch or clean and press the inch bell. I want to see somebody lift the Apollon wheels 3 times consecutively.
And power clean it off the floor, by the way, as well.
Right. You know, like, so when I see those things, then they get the discount.
Mark, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you for my very first episode on Making Gains podcast. Stay healthy. I hope your family are happy and well through coronavirus. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome, young man. I love I love it when I see young people doing shows like this that are positive, that are classy, very intellectual. Keep up the good work. You're going to be somebody that we see down the road.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that.
All right, man.
Naked bacon. One day, all bacon will be made this way.